For 7 years, I was her devoted follower and stand-in, faking gentleness and affection every single day, pouring out my heart with no dignity to show for it. On the eve of her wedding, she coldly tossed $100 million check at me as compensation, treating my 7 years of devotion like a joke. With a simple, "Don't bother me," and Ethan again, she expected to close the book on us for good. Just then, the system notified me. Mission failed. I would be erased in 10 days. So I threw all dignity to the wind, gathered a crew of models, and decided to spend recklessly, indulging in every pleasure to live out my last 10 days on Earth. The mission failed. The system had sentenced me to be erased. That day, I told Ava one last time, "It's not too late to turn back now. This is your last chance." She glanced dismissively at the 10 handsome young models I pointed out for her. A few days later, after seeing the video of me coughing up blood online, she started searching for me like a crazy person. But it was all too late. My fate had already been sealed. I pursued Ava for 7 long years, only for her to marry Ethan, who had just returned from overseas. She looked at me coldly, handed me a check for $100 million. As we agreed, she said, "This is your payment for being my stand-in." I ignored her because the system had just informed me that my mission had failed and I would be erased in 10 days. I was speechless. $100 million is a lot of money. Couldn't it at least let me enjoy it for a few more days before I had to go? So I stared at the check on the table, a small smirk playing on my lips. I asked the system in my head, "Is there really no way to turn this around?" The system's reply was blunt. No. Ava must have thought I couldn't bear to part with her. She pressed her lips together and added, "$100 million is more than enough. Don't bother me and Ethan again in the future, all right?" Fine, whatever you say." I snatched the check, my mind racing through the past 7 years. All that time I spent pretending to be gentle, considerate, and patient. And all it got me was 10 days to spend this money. $100 million, and I was supposed to spend it all in 10 days. How was that even possible? Whatever, 10 days was still 10 days. It was a short amount of time, but it was time nonetheless. It would be gone in a flash. With that thought, I looked down and started scrolling through my phone. As I was flipping through my contacts, she seemed to want to say something else. "James, But before she could finish, I had already hit the call button. "David, your office is close by, right? Give me 10 male models over here right now." "Are you insane? Can your body even handle that?" "Cut the crap. I need 10 of them immediately. They can name their price. I'm sending you my location. They have to be here in 10 minutes. "Ava? Oh, we broke up. Hurry, you've got 9.5 minutes left." After hanging up, I looked at Ava's face, which was twisted in disbelief. Now, where were we? Her face flushed crimson, and after a long pause, she finally managed to choke out, "James, are you doing this on purpose to make me angry?" I just smiled. "Miss Thompson, why would I want to make you angry? I've lived such a bland life. Can't I let loose for once? Don't worry, I won't bother you and Ethan." She was so stunned she couldn't speak. After a long moment, she added resentfully, "You're the one who said that. Make sure you remember it." I nodded, unconcerned, and waved to the 10 beautiful models just stepping out of a sports car. They greeted Ava first, then turned to me and called out shyly, "James." Surrounded by the cloud of perfume and beauty, I felt a little lightheaded. Amidst the buzz, I started leading them out, but I stopped abruptly at the door. I turned back to look at Ava's furious face and said, "It's not too late to change your mind. This is your last chance." Her eyes widened in disbelief. She looked from me to the models, then bit her lip and forced the words out. "I don't need it. I have no regrets. You should watch yourself. If you get hooked on this lifestyle, that $100 million won't last you more than a month, let alone a year. Don't come crying to me when it's gone." I replied, "Don't worry, I always keep my word." A month? I only have 10 days left to live anyway. For some reason, my chest suddenly felt incredibly tight. It must have been this body's instinctive reaction. I glanced down and saw one of the models reaching for my hand. For years, Ava and I had really only had each other. We even made a pact not to get too close with anyone of the opposite sex outside of work. This time, however, I took a model's hand in each of mine. I could feel Ava's stare behind me, like a nail driven into our clasped fingers. Let's go. First, we'll get this check cashed, and then I'm treating you all to a feast. I said it with a smile, but my hands tightened their grip unconsciously. Over the next few days, I was going to do everything I hadn't dared to do for the last 7 years. After depositing the check, I took the 10 model straight to the most exclusive restaurant in Los Angeles. I booked the entire place and ordered every single dish I had craved over the past few years but never tried. After we ate, I took them sightseeing to all the places I had only ever rushed past, places I could only admire from afar. After 7 years in this world, I had actually grown fond of quite a few spots. At night, I took the 10 women clubbing. We drank, we danced. This glamorous, decadent nightlife was exactly my style. Just as the party was getting good, I thought I caught a glimpse of Ava in the crowd, standing there with a stone-cold expression. I started to push my way through to see if it was really her. But a photographer from the paparazzi cut me off, shoving his way in front of me. He asked with a look of indignation, "Excuse me, are you James Miller? Aren't you worried Miss Thompson will be heartbroken to see you carrying on like this?" Heartbroken. I couldn't be bothered to answer him and just waved my hand dismissively. We broke up. A few of the photographers exchanged a look. "So you're just drowning your sorrows because Miss Thompson dumped you?" "Sad, drowning my sorrows." I shot back. "You're reading way too much into this. This is who I am. I wanted to do all this for a long time. I've been so repressed these last few years, I felt like I was suffocating. If you guys hadn't brought her up, I would have forgotten all about her. I chased her for 7 years, and the mission still failed in the end. I never once managed to truly reach her heart, and these photographers just had to pour salt on the wound. Besides, I didn't even have real feelings for her. She was just a target assigned to me by the system. It all started because her parents were so vehemently against her choice. So, she stubbornly claimed I was the one she wanted. When I was in excruciating pain, she would secretly shed tears for me. At company parties when I felt lost and discouraged, she was always by my side, cheering me on. She even contacted people behind my back to try and help me. Before he returned, she was just a sweet, naive girl who cried easily. She would often ask me through her tears, "Do you truly love me?" But I have a new target in the next world. There's a whole forest of opportunities waiting for me. What was she to me? Nothing worth mentioning. What a buzzkill. They completely ruined a perfectly good time. I looked back toward the spot where I thought I'd seen Ava, but there was no one there. I guess I was just seeing things. The paparazzi were still trying to ask questions, so I quickly gave the models a look, signaling them to leave ahead of me. Before I left, I shot back at them, "Take your pictures, write your stories, I don't care. But can you stop crowding me? All these questions are getting annoying." Feeling the buzz from the alcohol, I took the 10 women back to my hotel. The receptionist at the front desk asked how many rooms I needed. "How many?" I slurred. "Just one is enough. The presidential suite." The first thing I did when I woke up the next morning was sprint to the bathroom and empty my stomach into the toilet. Damn, I had way too much to drink last night. As I was heaving, my throat seized up and I started spitting up blood. I stared in shock for a second before quickly flushing it away. But as soon as I did, a searing pain exploded in my stomach, like it was being violently wrung out. I slid down to the floor, clutching my abdomen and trying to bear the gut-wrenching agony. I gritted my teeth and asked the system, "What is happening?" The system replied coolly, "This body is dying. It's part of the normal process." Oh, right. Stomach cancer. The memory finally surfaced. The medical report was still sitting on the nightstand. I'd already told Ava about my diagnosis at home. But that day, Ethan had asked her out. She just gave me a cold, mocking look and said, "People like you get sick, James. You might as well just die and get it over with." It looked like her wish was about to come true. I was really dying. I was writhing on the floor in agony when I caught sight of a giant screen outside the window. A looping wedding announcement was playing on it, which read, "Thompson heiress Ava will be holding a grand wedding in 9 days with Ethan Hayes." Below the text was their wedding photo. Ethan held Ava's hand, and the soft, gentle smile on her face was an expression I had never seen in all my 7 years with her. The pain in my stomach intensified and my whole body started to convulse. I was going to die. I asked the system, can I check out early? I really can't take this anymore. The system replied, no. I thought for a moment, then asked, doesn't the system store have that item, the painless existence fruit? Give me one of those. The system asked, are you sure? It takes points from completing several worlds missions consecutively to afford that. I was in too much pain to speak clearly. The missions in my past worlds had been varied, and a few had been complete disasters. I've been hurt before, plenty of times, but never like this. It was killing me. Confirm exchange. As soon as I said it, a small red fruit appeared in my palm. I popped it into my mouth, feeling a pang of regret for using it. The fruit dissolved the moment it touched my tongue, and its effect was instantaneous. The agonizing pain that felt like it could kill me vanished in a second. I lay sprawled on the floor, gasping for breath. The system's mechanical voice echoed in my head. The painless existence fruit is effective only in the current world. During this time, the host will feel no pain, whether from being hit by a car or any other injury. However, all other physiological reactions, such as bleeding, will remain. So, in other words, bones will still break and I'll still cough up blood. I just won't be able to feel the pain. Right, I get it. I lay on the floor for a few more minutes. The models, who I had thoroughly worn out the night before, started to wake up and gathered around to help me to my feet. After getting cleaned up, we headed out to start the day's activities. But just as we got to the hotel lobby, we ran right into Ava, who was checking in with Ethan. What a coincidence. The receptionist's voice was perfectly clear and loud. Mr. Miller, about the suite you booked yesterday, will you be extending your stay? With these young ladies? Why wouldn't I? This was the most expensive hotel in the city, after all. I turned and told the receptionist to charge my card for the extension. I could feel Ava's glare on my back, sharp enough to drill a hole right through me. It wasn't my fault. I was here first. She and Ethan showed up after me, so no one could claim I was interfering in their lives. The receptionist was efficient and processed the extension quickly. I led my group of 10 models right past them, not even sparing Ava a glance from the corner of my eye. I took the 10 models on a tour of all the city's landmarks. We ate, we drank, and we had an incredible time. The entertainment headlines were dominated by two things: news of Ava's wedding and me. Hashtag James Miller surrounded by 10 beauties. Hashtag James Miller living like James Bond. Hashtag James Miller living his best life. Hashtag paparazzi follow James Miller, who couldn't care less. Hashtag public opinion online was split, though most of it was negative towards me. I couldn't have cared less. I was about to leave this world behind anyway. In addition to the 10 models, I also hired a few bodyguards. I didn't want anyone ruining the fun of my last few days. Time was short, so I packed my schedule. Days were for feasting and shopping sprees. Nights were for clubbing and bar hopping. Sometimes we'd go back to the hotel, sometimes we wouldn't. Life was, in a word, amazing. One evening, as I was about to head to the next bar on our list, Ethan suddenly stepped in front of me. I cut right to the chase. What do you want? He started. Can we talk somewhere private? I shot back, spit out. I'm on a tight schedule. He looked offended, but managed to keep his cool. Look, you're just bitter because I ended up with your girlfriend, right? But what's meant to be will be. You can't force it. As a man, you should know when to let go. Don't you think it's a bit petty to be so public about all this, just to embarrass Ava and get back at her? I paused for a second, then burst out laughing. What do I have to be bitter about? I asked him. Besides, my happiness is none of your business. What I do with these women is my own choice. And whether or not Ava is embarrassed has absolutely nothing to do with me. If you think this is revenge, that's actually kind of funny. Buddy, you clearly have no idea what real revenge looks like. I couldn't help but remember the protagonist from my last world, the one I'd left permanently paralyzed. The thought made me laugh even harder. He instinctively took a step back, his eyes filled with a new wariness. I sized him up, looking at the face that was a 70% match to my own. The only reason Ava was ever with me for those 7 years, right from the very beginning, was because of my resemblance to him. As per our arrangement, every time she was in a moment of crisis, she would call out the wrong name. She would call me Ethan. The only exception was the night before he came back. She was completely wasted, her eyes glazed over, but she buried her face in my chest and whispered with a startling sincerity, "James, I love you so much." For a second, I almost believed she meant it, that she really loved me. But in the end, I still couldn't replace him. They were still getting married. I looked up at the massive billboards towering over the city. They still displayed the same message. Tomorrow, Los Angeles will host the grand wedding of Ava Thompson and Ethan Hayes. I realized that today was already the 9th day. A strange, unidentifiable feeling suddenly welled up inside me, like a fire spreading through my chest. It seemed that fruit didn't just numb physical pain. It had been dulling the ache in my heart as well. A pack of paparazzi was trailing close behind us, and Ethan was still standing right in front of me. I grinned at him. "Don't look at me like that, Mr. Groom-to-be. You're getting married tomorrow. Early congratulations." He frowned, looking like he was about to speak, but I cut him off with a wave of my hand. "I mean it. Congratulations." With that, I turned and walked away with the models and my bodyguards. We went on with our party, but I couldn't shake the bad feeling that had settled in my gut. It was all Ethan's fault for killing my good mood. I figured if I just drank some more, I could forget about everything and get back to having fun. So I forced myself to get into the party spirit. I raised my glass, looked at the 10 laughing models across the table, and let out a loud laugh of my own. The table was covered in colorful bottles of liquor, and I decided I was going to drink them all. "Here," I said, "mix all of these together. Let's make a real cocktail." I pointed to the row of rainbow-colored bottles on the table. The women excitedly started pouring the bright liquids into one glass. I picked up the resulting pale, purple concoction, tilted my head back, and downed it in one go. "See that? Pretty impressive, huh?" I said with a raised eyebrow. The models all clapped and cheered. Their praise felt good, so I grabbed another glass to keep going. But then a sickeningly sweet, metallic taste rushed up my throat. I doubled over and coughed up a mouthful of blood. "James, are you okay? Did you just spit up blood?" A few of the women beside me shrieked, terrified. I coughed, choking so hard it brought tears to my eyes. I waved a hand dismissively. I'm fine. Let's keep going. I was just getting started showing you what I can do." I hadn't even finished the sentence. As I lifted the glass to my lips, another torrent of blood erupted from my mouth. It shot directly into the pale purple liquid, turning it a sickening crimson. I couldn't stop. I kept coughing up more and more blood, great gushes of it that splattered all over the table. "James, you're scaring us." The models were on the verge of tears, panicking as the paparazzi's cameras flashed relentlessly. The bar staff rushed over to see what was happening. I managed to glance at my phone. It was the 10th day, midnight on the dot. At that exact moment, a breaking news alert blasted across every entertainment site. Hashtag James Miller violently coughs up blood in public hashtag. After settling the bill, I led the women out of the bar. A crowd had formed, completely blocking our way, but thankfully, the bodyguards I'd hired were able to clear a path for us. The crowd tried to follow us, still snapping photos, but I had been a race car driver in a previous world. Shaking a tail was second nature to me. I finally lost all of them and drove out to a deserted patch of land on the edge of the city, where I parked the car. My phone buzzed incessantly beside me, the screen lighting up with one notification after another. Hashtag James Miller is shocking transformation. Hashtag the secret behind James Miller's behavior. Hashtag the truth about James Miller coughing up blood. Ava Thompson wedding day. Hashtag. And trending right alongside them was the main event, the wedding of a century for Ava Thompson and Ethan Hayes. My contact list was blowing up with messages and calls from everyone who had my number. On every social media platform, the comments were a torrent of hate. James Miller is so pathetic. Had to make a scene on their wedding day. What a loser. Why doesn't he just die already? She and Ethan are the real perfect couple. You're a stand-in. You should know your place. Learn the rules. I scrolled through the comments, feeling a strange mix of amusement and helplessness. I knew none of it mattered, that it was all just meaningless noise in this world, but the words still made my chest tighten. I picked up my phone ignoring the flood of new notifications, and answered the call from David. James, what the? Before he could finish, I cut him off. David, I've already sent the models home. Wire their payment for the last few days to your agency's account. Settle up with them like we discussed. Is now really the time to talk about money? David yelled through the phone. What the hell are you playing at? The plan was for them to help you have some fun, to forget Ava and move on. What is all this? I stared out the window at the night sky. I didn't plan for this, I said slowly. I had no idea it would be that bad. Everyone online is saying it looked too real to be an act. His voice dropped. You're not actually... Yeah, I said calmly. I'm dying. Shit. David swore, his voice laced with panic. You have the money. Why aren't you getting treatment? Where are you? I'm coming to get you. A sudden, inexplicable sadness washed over me, and I lost all desire to explain. I don't want treatment. Then I hung up. David called back immediately. I ignored it and switched my phone to silent. I lit a cigarette and quietly took in the scenery, spending my final moments in this world in the silence of the empty landscape. Moonlight washed over the barren fields. I noticed a small, fluffy bird that looked like a snowball with a long tail land gently on a nearby branch. Without thinking, I raised my phone and snapped a picture of it. My first instinct was to send it to Ava. Habit is a powerful thing. Back when we were together, Ava adored cute little animals like this. Seeing one would make her happy for hours. So, over the years, it became a habit of mine. Whenever I saw something small and cute, I'd take a picture and send it to her. But just as I opened our iMessage conversation, a new message from her popped up. You're pathetic, James. Faking coughing up blood just to get sympathy and ruin things for me and Ethan. For some reason, my chest suddenly felt tight, like I couldn't breathe, even though the car window was wide open. Forget it. I wasn't going to send it to her. I couldn't believe I'd forgotten we were already broken up. But I was still holding on to all the little habits I'd formed when I was trying to win her over. I backed out of our conversation and decided to post the picture of the bird on my own Twitter account instead. I captioned it, "Quick little snowball." It wasn't long before my account was flooded with hateful comments, trying to ruin her wedding day. James Miller, you've hit a new low. Just die already. I'll bring flowers to your grave next year. I sighed. I shouldn't have posted anything. Messages from David were popping up too, but I ignored them all. Then he started commenting directly on my post. James, pick up the phone. Answer my messages now. If you don't answer, I'm releasing the audio. Right after that, a new pinned comment appeared. It was from Ava. I was always going to marry Ethan. I don't belong to you, and I'm not your property. If you ever really loved me, you would learn to let go. A good ex should just disappear, as if they were already dead. A bitter, trembling sensation spread from the pit of my stomach, making it hard to breathe. I could only grip my phone tighter, my fingers shaking as I scrolled through the comments. I deleted Ava from all my contacts and slumped back in my seat. Notifications kept piling up on my phone, a chorus of voices saying everything and nothing, but I didn't have the energy to read them. What was this suffocating feeling? I couldn't describe it, but it was a real weight on my chest. I'd eaten the painless fruit. I wasn't supposed to feel any pain. So why did I feel this terrible? I cursed the system in my head, accusing it of selling me a defective product. The system explained slowly, you are not feeling any physical pain. However, emotional distress cannot be completely blocked. Host, you are simply experiencing profound sadness. I gritted my teeth, not wanting to respond. My body didn't hurt, but this feeling was worse than any physical pain. Her words echoed in my head. A good ex should just disappear, as if they were already dead. If I wasn't so weak right now, I would show them all what real revenge looked like. But what was the point? It was all meaningless now. I asked the system, how much longer do I have to feel like this? The system replied, calm down, host. It will pass in 6 or 7 hours. For the next world, I will arrange a sweet, romantic storyline for you. I scoffed. Waste another 6 or 7 hours of my life on a woman like her. Every minute is a loss. That's it. I'm done. Before the system could finish its sentence, I pulled a knife from the glove compartment and, without hesitation, ended it myself. The system was stunned. Host, You didn't let me finish. Outside, it had started to rain, the drops coming down hard and fast. I listened quietly to the system's alerts as I felt the strength drain from my body. After coughing up a few more mouthfuls of blood, my vision started to darken, and a feeling of complete emptiness washed over me. With a final ding from the system, I felt myself begin to float upwards. My phone slipped from my grasp and fell to the seat beside me. The last thing on its screen was a series of explosive, breaking news alerts. Hashtag David Carter releases James Miller's phone recording. Hashtag James Miller diagnosed with stomach cancer. Hashtag James Miller's full medical records leaked. Then the screen flashed and the phone began to vibrate violently. Ava's name pulsed on the incoming call screen. Ava called me several times, but I had already left that world. The James of that world was dead. Of course, he couldn't answer her phone call. When she couldn't get through, her messages started pouring in like a flood. James, what are you doing now? Didn't we agree to leave each other alone? Answer your phone. James, I'm serious. I'm getting angry. Tell me that recording online is fake, right? James, where are you? Meanwhile, the gossip sites and entertainment news outlets were churning out headlines. Hashtag James Miller allegedly refusing treatment. Hashtag is James Miller on his deathbed. Hashtag David was tagging me all over the internet, desperately trying to get a response from me. The 10 models I had hired were also tracked down and swarmed by reporters, but for the moment, they weren't saying much. Online sleuths started piecing together my movements, from the places I'd been seen with the models, to the date of my diagnosis, to the records of my first and only visit to the hospital. The internet quickly divided into two camps. One side was convinced this was all an elaborate stunt I had orchestrated to ruin Ava and Ethan's wedding. The other side argued that if that were true, it would make me the most pathetic clown imaginable. Sooner or later, every lie gets exposed. Social media was in an uproar. People were sharing the recording David had released, screenshots of me deleting all my posts about Ava and unfollowing her, and the video of me coughing up blood in the bar. And finally, there was the clip of me smiling at Ethan, my words perfectly clear. Mr. Groom-to-be, congratulations. I wish you a happy wedding. I mean it. The rain was coming down harder now. I floated high above the city, looking down at the drenched streets below. I felt like I was waiting for something, though I couldn't say what. I don't know how much time passed before people started to arrive on the hill. A car screeched to a halt, the sound tearing through the rain. Ava threw her door open and stormed out of the car, her movements sharp with anger. From a distance, she yelled toward my car. James! Her voice was full of rage, but I could hear it trembling. She started walking toward the car, braving the downpour. James, I'm warning you. Before she could finish, someone behind her screamed. Oh my God, what is that? Is that blood? There's so much of it. It's everywhere. We found the spot from the picture James posted. Don't tell me. That car, it looks like his. Oh my God. Ava froze. She looked down and saw a dark liquid trickling from a seam of the car door. It mixed with the rain, creating a spreading, dark red stain on the ground. She was completely still, as if paralyzed. In the darkness, her shoes stood in a puddle of crimson water. The rain and blood swirled around her feet, painting a gruesome scene. I floated nearby, watching as the color drained from her face and her hands began to shake. She lifted her foot as if to step forward, but she couldn't move. Her eyes were glued to the car door. One of the reporters who had followed her, bolder than the rest, finally worked up the courage to approach. The reporter gritted his teeth and pulled open the driver's side door. Aya! The moment the door swung open, he let out a piercing scream. He stumbled backward, his legs giving out from under him, and collapsed onto the wet ground. I almost felt bad for him. The scene inside the car was pretty gruesome. I had made sure to be thorough before I left. If I had been too gentle, I would have just had to lie there and slowly bleed out like an invalid. With the painless fruit, I hadn't felt a thing, but the blood had still sprayed everywhere. By the time they found me, it had already started to pool outside the car. The scene, both inside and outside the car, was a bloody mess. My God, that's horrible. Someone call the police. The scene erupted into chaos. But Ava remained motionless in the storm, letting the rain drench her. Her lips were pressed into a thin line, her eyes were bloodshot, and she stared unblinking at the body inside the car. A few of the braver onlookers pulled out their phones and took a picture of the car's interior. The flash of a camera seemed to snap Ava out of her trance. "Get away from him!" she shrieked, shoving them back. She threw herself in front of the open door, shielding my body like a madwoman. "All of you, stay away from him." Someone started to protest, but after a look from their neighbor, they quietly backed away. Once the crowd had mostly dispersed, Ava just stood there, staring at my body. "James," she whispered. "James." She reached out and gently shook my shoulder. "James, wake up." She kept calling my name and shaking me, but my body was completely limp, offering no response. She threw her arms around me, holding me so tightly it was as if she was trying to merge her body with mine. Her tears mixed with the blood on my clothes, staining her formal dress crimson. She sobbed, her heartbroken cries echoing across the empty hillside. I hovered above, watching her. How pointless. I had chased her for 7 years. I had endured every one of her cold, dismissive looks. For her to be crying like this now, what was the point? The rain was relentless. When David arrived with the police, he froze, his eyes fixed on my blood-soaked body. "It can't be," he whispered, his voice cracking. Then he lunged forward and shoved Ava to the ground. In this world, David and I were as close as brothers. I'd lost my parents a long time ago. When we first met, we were both nobodies, one of us with no connections, the other just struggling to get by. We got through those hard times by leaning on each other. Later, after we had both made something of ourselves and had our own careers and lives, we always stayed in touch. That's why when I called him and asked him to find me 10 models, he didn't ask a single question. He just made it happen. He shoved Ava aside, his eyes filled with disgust. He sneered, "Aren't you the bride? Shouldn't you be at your wedding, enjoying the spotlight? What are you doing here? Didn't you two break up? Weren't you the one who told him to stop making you and Ethan sick? So why are you putting on this act now, pretending you can't live without him? It's pathetic. I guess whether he's disgusting or not just depends on your mood. Cut the act. If it wasn't for you, would James have ever done this to himself? Get out of here. I don't want to look at you. And remember this, Ava, from now on, your wedding anniversary is also the day James died. You'll have to carry his death on your conscience for the rest of your life. Every year when you blow out your birthday candles, don't forget to light one for him, too." Ava opened her mouth, as if she wanted to say something, but David had already turned away from her. A few of the police officers ignored their argument and walked over to the car to begin examining my body and the crime scene. The situation was pretty straightforward. I was a minor celebrity, after all, and this was the car I always drove. To be safe, I had installed a dash cam that recorded both the interior and exterior of the car, 24/7. It captured everything perfectly. After reviewing the dash cam footage and examining the scene, they were able to rule out foul play. The officer reviewing the footage couldn't help but mutter to himself, "Damn, he was ruthless. Didn't hesitate for a second." I felt a little embarrassed hearing that. After all, I'd had the painless fruit, so I hadn't felt a thing. Plus, with all the alcohol I'd had, the whole thing was as simple as closing my eyes. Good thing I was just a floating spirit now, so I didn't have to take it personally. David, on the other hand, his eyes were red as he glared at the silent Ava. He said through gritted teeth, "James told me before that he didn't want to live anymore." Staring at the blood-stained ground, he clenched his jaw. All this blood. He must have been in so much pain. I was speechless. "Buddy, you're reading way too much into this. I was just making an early exit. I didn't feel a thing." Seeing him so broken up actually made me feel a little guilty. I wanted to stand in front of him and explain, but then I remembered he couldn't see me. Never mind. Afterwards, the authorities offered a few words of comfort to David, then had both him and Ava give their statements. Since foul play had been ruled out, the process was fairly routine. Ava kept her head down the entire time and didn't say a word. I couldn't see her face, but her hands were clenched into such tight fists that her nails were digging into her palms. The moment they stepped out of the police station, they were swarmed by a mob of reporters that had gathered at the entrance, descending on them like vultures. "Miss Thompson, Do you have any comment on the death of James Miller? Miss Thompson, will your wedding to Ethan Hayes be proceeding as planned? Miss Thompson, James Miller's medical records have been leaked online. What is your response to him choosing to end his life in this manner? The questions came at her like a volley of bullets, but she remained silent. The crowd pushed and shoved, and she struggled to keep her balance, her face ashen. She didn't offer a single word of explanation. She just turned to David, her voice strained. Can I take care of him? David let out a cold laugh. You're not his wife. Why on earth would I give him to you? You're the one who told him to get lost, to stop making you and Ethan sick. His eyes were completely bloodshot. He spoke slowly, enunciating every word. Well, you got what you wanted. He's never going to bother you again. Shouldn't you be happy? Why start playing the grieving lover now? Cut the act. Who is this performance for? There's no point. After he finished speaking, I saw him roughly wipe his eyes with the back of his hand. He walked away without a backward glance, leaving Ava alone in the middle of the circle of reporters and gawkers. I watched David's retreating figure and sighed. The rain had stopped, but more and more people were crowding around. The internet was already in a frenzy. A few of the media outlets that had arrived with Ava had been live streaming when they got there. Although the streams were quickly shut down and the videos were ordered to be removed, it was too late. Plenty of people had already seen the moment the car door was opened. That gruesome image spread like wildfire across every platform. It was impossible to contain. Everyone knew. I was dead. It was a horrible death. And it had happened on Ava's wedding day. Hashtag James Miller confirmed dead hashtag. Reliable sources report cause of death as suicide. Scene described as extremely gruesome. Hashtag James Miller full medical records leaked. Hashtag medical experts state that with treatment, James Miller could have lived for several more years. Sources close to the couple reveal that Miller received a $100 million settlement after his breakup with Thompson, making the cost of treatment a non-issue. Based on the phone call with David Carter, it appears Miller had no desire to continue living. He reportedly left nearly his entire estate to Carter. The internet's reaction was immediate and explosive. Soon, the 10 models I had been with were being interviewed, and clips of their interviews were everywhere. James wasn't what you think. He was a perfect gentleman, one of them said. We all stayed in the same suite, but the presidential suite is enormous. Nothing ever happened. I silently rolled my eyes. Shut up. You make it sound like I'm impotent. I was sick, you idiots. Sick. It wasn't that I didn't want to. It was that I couldn't. Can't any of you use your heads? One of the models, her eyes red from crying, said, it was obvious he was doing it on purpose. He hired us the same day he and Ava broke up. He never said it, but we all figured he was testing her, waiting to see if Miss Thompson would come and stop him. Another model, a woman named Laura, nodded. That's right. When we were leaving that first night, he said, this is her last chance. I facepalmed. Great, they were spot on. Could they just not next time? Couldn't they just take it at face value, that I was genuinely giving her one last chance? The model continued. When James was drunk, he would call out Miss Thompson's name in his sleep. He must have really loved her. Everyone knows she's the one who left him. But he still took all the blame, made sure he was the only one people were mad at. We had no idea he was sick. We just saw how he packed his schedule and thought he was trying to keep his mind busy enough to forget about Ava. But looking back, he was obviously already very sick, and he just kept pouring alcohol on top of it. He must have been in so much pain. Maybe he really just didn't want to live anymore. At this point, I was too tired to even argue. Yes, I called out Ava's name in my sleep, but in my dreams, I was screaming at her. Thank God I was already dead. Otherwise, this level of public humiliation would have killed me. The irony was when I was alive, the whole world hated me. They said I deserved it, that I was shameless, that I was trying to ruin Ava and Ethan's wedding, that I didn't know my place, that our breakup was all my fault. But the second I died, the narrative completely flipped. Suddenly, everyone felt sorry for me. People started making tribute videos, editing together clips of me from the past few years set to sad music. Everyone was talking about how much James must have loved Ava, what a tragic romantic figure I was. The internet was flooded with comments defending me, pitying me, all in surprising unison. It was ridiculous. I sat in Ava's car, watching her exhausted, drawn face, and I couldn't begin to guess what she was thinking. Her assistant, Lisa, had just managed to extract her from the chaotic scrum of reporters and get her back into the car. Now, they were just driving aimlessly through the city. Lisa, in the passenger seat, glanced back at Ava. "Miss Thompson, where should we go? The traffic is impossible everywhere. The whole city is in an uproar." She hesitated for a moment before adding, "And what about Ethan?" She trailed off, not daring to finish the question. The car circled the city blocks, making the same loop 3 times. On their 3rd time around, Ava suddenly spoke. "Stop the car." The driver immediately pulled over to the curb. "Both of you, get out," she said, her voice hoarse. The driver and Lisa looked at each other. They exchanged a glance, but did as she asked, getting out of the car. Ava slid into the driver's seat and started the engine. "Miss Thompson." Lisa rushed to the window, her face etched with worry. "What are you doing?" "The wedding is off," Ava said, and then she hit the gas and sped away. I hitched a ride, settling into the passenger seat. I watched the scenery blur past the window. Street lights flashed by, casting shifting patterns of light and shadow across her face. I watched her profile, an unnameable emotion churning inside me. She drove all the way to my old apartment. The code of the door was 723521. July was her birthday month. I hadn't been back in days, and a thin layer of dust covered everything. She switched on the lights and stood in the entryway, staring at the framed photo of the 2 of us on the wall. "James," she called out into the empty apartment. Her voice echoed in the silence. There was no reply. "James," she called again, as if she expected me to jump out from around a corner and yell, "Got you." Surprised. Of course, that wasn't going to happen. The only sound in the apartment was the echo of her own voice. She started tearing the place apart, yanking open drawers and ransacking cabinets, tossing things aside left and right like a madwoman on a desperate search for something. Before long, the entire apartment was a complete mess. After what felt like an eternity, she finally found my old diagnosis report in the nightstand drawer. Her hands trembled as she flipped through the pages. "This can't be real," she mumbled to herself. "James has to be lying to me." Then she reached the final line. "Stomach cancer, stage 2. Immediate hospitalization and treatment recommended." A single tear fell, landing right on the date of the report. It was the day I had gone to tell her. Her hands were shaking uncontrollably now. In a sudden burst of fury, she ripped the report to shreds, tearing each page into tiny pieces as if destroying the paper could erase the words written on it. She stormed through the apartment, a whirlwind of grief and rage, like a woman who had lost her mind. Finally, she pulled a bottle of whiskey from my fridge and started drinking it straight from the bottle. Her phone buzzed. She glanced down at a message from Lisa. "Miss Thompson, I've obtained the raw dashcam footage from the police. I've sent it to your email." An email notification popped up a moment later. She opened it. There was a single video file attached. The video showed my final moments. Lisa had added a note to the email. "After James took the picture of the bird, he tried to call David. It looks like he was going to send the photo to you, but then he saw your message and posted it to his own account instead. Later, it seems James received another message from you. His mood changed drastically, and that's when he picked up the knife." Ava played the video again and again, focusing on the part where I received those last few messages from her. When she reached the end, she let out a sudden, harsh laugh. "James," she said, "is this your idea of revenge?" Her shoulders shook, but tears were streaming down her face. "Well, you succeeded." I watched, completely bewildered. Did she really think someone would kill themselves just to get revenge on her? What a joke. All that happened was I failed to win her over. "System, what does she mean by that?" I asked. "I do not know," the system replied. "I'm a program. I am not equipped to understand human emotions or their complexities." Fair enough. Then I remembered something. "System, why haven't I left this world yet? Why am I still floating around here?" The system replied, its tone something like exasperation. "You didn't let me finish earlier. You were supposed to remain in this world for the full 10 days. You initiated a premature departure. Since your allotted time was not complete, you cannot leave immediately. The administrators have flagged this as an attempt to exploit a loophole, and as a consequence, your observation period has been extended. Furthermore, you are warned that any future attempts to do this will result not in this ethereal state, but in you being trapped inside your physical corpse until it fully decomposes. I picture that for a second. It was better not to think about it. I went back to watching Ava chug her drink. All I could do was shake my head and sigh. She kept drinking until she could barely walk, then stumbled to the bathroom to be sick. As she was violently ill, her phone rang again. The caller ID showed Lisa's name. "What?" She answered, her voice raspy. "Miss Thompson, I know this is a bad time," Lisa began, hesitating before pushing on. "David is at the crematorium. He's preparing for James's final arrangements. I was wondering if you wanted to be there." Ava was silent for a few seconds before she responded. "Send me the address." After hanging up, she rushed out the door and drove straight to the crematorium. She arrived just as they were about to push my body into the cremation chamber. Watching this from the sidelines felt surreal. "Wait!" Ava cried, rushing forward to stop them. David turned, and when he saw her, his eyes blazed with fury. "You have a nerve to show your face here? Get out!" Ava swayed on her feet, her eyes red as she begged, "David, please. I just want to see him one last time." "See him?" David scoffed. "Don't tell me you haven't seen the dashcam footage. He wouldn't have died like this if it weren't for you. You want to see him? If James knew you were here, watching him be cremated, he'd probably rise from the dead just to strangle you." "Get out," David roared. "You killed the only brother I ever had." But Ava didn't move, as if her feet were nailed to the floor. He strode over to her and slapped her hard across the face. The blow was so forceful that the corner of her lip immediately started to bleed. Lisa arrived just in time to see it happen and rushed between them. "David, you can't do that. That's assault. Stop it." "Miss Thompson is grieving, too." "Grieving?" David laughed, a cold, humorless sound. If she knew the first thing about grief, where's she been all this time? She was about to marry another man. I'm sure she was just wishing James would die and get out of her way, wasn't she? Go on, ask her. Ask her what the last thing she ever said to James was. A good ex should just disappear, as if they were already dead. And I suppose she'll say she didn't mean it like that. Lisa stood between them, frantic. I don't know how to explain it, but you can't just hit a woman. Before she could finish her sentence, David slapped her too. Lisa stood there, stunned into silence. David used the moment of silence to glare at Ava, who was just staring blankly at my body. "Why aren't you saying anything?" David demanded. "Cat got your tongue? Or do you need someone else to make excuses for you?" Ava's lips were a thin, white line. She said nothing. "Say something," David finally screamed, his voice raw with a desperate, hollow grief. A heavy sadness settled over me. I wished I could tell him not to be like this, that I was really okay. I was moving on to the next world soon. He didn't need to be so heartbroken for me, but it didn't matter what I said. He couldn't hear me. Ava's lips finally moved. After a long silence, she whispered 2 words. "I'm sorry." "Sorry?" David's laugh was cold and sharp. He stared at Ava. "You don't get to say you're sorry. If you're really so sorry, then there's an easy solution. You can go with him. I'll even do you the favor of letting you see him one last time." Ava slowly lifted her head. Blood was still trickling from the corner of her mouth, dripping onto the already stained fabric of her dress, the dark spots spreading. She said nothing, just stood there. David was about to taunt her again, but in the next second, there was a spray of blood. "Miss Thompson!" Lisa screamed, but she was too late. Ava had moved quickly, her actions an exact mirror of my own. "Doctor! Somebody get a doctor." Lisa wrestled the knife from her hand, pressing down hard on the wound as she fumbled to call 911. But Ava pushed her away. She looked up at David, who was frozen in shock. Her voice was barely a whisper. "I want to see him." David's fists were clenched, so tight his knuckles were white. "I'll take that as a yes," Ava said. Then, her steps unsteady, she walked toward my body. She stood beside me, not saying a word, just looking. As the blood continued to flow from her wound, Her face grew progressively paler. In the distance, the wail of an ambulance grew louder. David finally broke the silence. "Did you ever love him?" Ava stared blankly at my body. She had lost so much blood that her lips were completely white. "I don't know," she managed to say. "All I know is that right now I'm so sad it feels like my heart has been ripped out of my chest." David opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, he said nothing at all. "Over here," Lisa's voice called out from the distance. "The paramedics are here." "She's over here." Ava gave my body one last look. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'll be with you soon." She leaned down, as if to press a final kiss to my forehead, but before she could, she collapsed. Lisa and the paramedics rushed over, frantically getting Ava onto a stretcher and carrying her toward the ambulance. The piercing wail of the siren grew louder, then faded into the distance. David stood in the same spot for a long time before finally, slowly, shaking his head. "Excuse me," one of the crematorium workers finally said, breaking the silence. "Should we proceed?" David seemed to snap out of his trance. He nodded. "Yes. Continue." Right away, the worker started the machine. I watched as my own body was slowly consumed by flames, until all that was left was a small pile of gray ash. "System," I asked, "do you think she ever actually loved me?" The system's reply was dripping with sarcasm. "Are you developing genuine emotions?" I snapped back at it. "Don't be an idiot. I just want to know if she loved me. If she did, does that mean the mission for this world is technically complete? Can I get my points now?" "Dream on," the system said bluntly. "Whether she loved you or not is irrelevant now, host. I am already selecting your next world. We will depart when the time comes." Then, as if trying to comfort me, it added, "Do not grieve for a heartless woman. The next world will be better. I guarantee it." "Then pick a sweet one for me," I sighed. "I don't think I can survive another one like this." Acknowledged. This system has the matter under control. Preparing for world transfer. Commencing countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The system's countdown seemed to stretch on. I watched the sun dip below the horizon, its last rays bathing the crematorium in a golden light. I turned to look at David in the distance and whispered goodbye. As if he sensed something, he suddenly looked in my direction. I gave him a small wave, a final farewell. I hope the rest of his life in this world is a good one. The tragedy of this story isn't a lack of love, but a failure of communication and a heart that was taken for granted. It serves as a stark reminder. Never take devotion for granted, and never test the one who loves you most with cruel words. Because sometimes, when someone walks away, it's forever. Hold on tight to the ones you love while you still can, so that a deep love doesn't end with nothing but a sorry that comes too late.